Hello friends, good morning and welcome to the EduSite Network. Our topic of discussion today will be Hindu temples, wherein we talk about it and also take it up as in a visual form, presenting wonderful Hindu temples before our viewers. And friends, to take this topic further and to illuminate it, we have with us in our studio subject expert Dr. Anand Bardhan, Assistant Professor, Delhi Institute of Heritage Research and Management, New Delhi. His specialization includes temple architecture, heritage management and museum studies. And friends, with this brief introduction, I welcome sir to the studio and request him to begin our today's lecture. Sir, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Urvashi. Hindu temple is one very important structural form, and it is known all over world, not only for its beauty, its grandeur, its gracious splendor, but also for a very complex schemata of sculptural decoration. We take Hindu temple symbolically and philosophically as a miniature cosmos that represents the three different spheres of the world: the terrestrial world, the space, and also the celestial world. A Hindu temple should not be taken only as a structure which represents Hindu faith escape. It is basically a great cultural institution, and we find that apart from being a ritual escape, a Hindu temple has served various purposes in the long historic period of its evolution and growth. So, in this class we will try to understand the origin of Hindu temple, its growth, its development and emergence of various features in different parts of this country. As far as history of Hindu temples is concerned, we must know that before Gupta period there was no structure made of durable material which can rightly be called a Hindu temple as such. There were of course Buddhist monasteries, chaityas, mahaviharas, stupas, there were jinayatans, but a permanent kind of Hindu structure was not erected. As far as the subsidiary evidences regarding evolution of Hindu temples are concerned, we may quote some of the examples which are structurally significant, and one may talk about the Bhabru, which is a place near Jaipur, and where we have got a circular structure which has been considered by some of the architecture historians as a temple. We can take it as a Buddhist structure which was made of brick. Similarly, we have some evidences of apsidal form of structures from Chair and Chezrala, and these structures are very significant because they are made of brick and they have been plastered by stucco, which is a material which was made by mixing lime with clay. So, these apsidal structures which have been found at places like Ter and Chezrala, they are also taken as temples. Undoubtedly, they were temples of their own kind, but again they were related to Buddhism. So, we can say that there are some structural evidences related to circular form, and also there are structures which are of apsidal form. Apsidal form means the frontal part is rectangular, while the lower end of the structure is semicircular. So, these two kind of forms were quite popular probably before the Gupta period. It was during the Gupta period that temples related to Brahmanical cult they were made, and in this respect a very systematic study has been done on the Gupta temples, and we find that there were three different stages of Gupta temples. In the very first stage, there were made square shaped temples, and these square shaped photographs please, there were made square shaped temples, and these square shaped temples or rectangular shaped temples have a sanctum sanctorum, and at the front there is a porch, there is a pillared porch. If you will see this particular figure, this is from Ter, and this is an apsidal form of temple. It is pre-Gupta as far as its age is concerned, but in Gupta period a structural form that evolved, it was basically a rectangular form of temple. This is temple number 17, and this has been found at Sanchi. It is very close to the great stupa of Sanchi. Here the temple walls are not decorated. The only decorative element one may find is the columns, and especially the upper part of the column, which have typical Gupta kind of carving. Then we find in Gupta period some important changes had occurred, and the door lintel and the door jumb, they were made highly decorative in this second phase. We have some temples from of this period which have been found situated at Bhumra, that has been found situated at Tigwa, and the temples of Bhumra, Nachna Kuthara and Tigwa. These are the three very important sites of the Gupta temple. There one may find that the main entrance is very richly decorated, it is well carved out. If you will see the lintel of the temple, it has Lalat Bimb, and Lalat Bimb is the central point of the lintel. On that the image of the deity is carved out. Here in this figure you can see this is a figure of Vishnu seated on Ananta Prayanka, means it is a Prayanka, a couch that has been formed by the Ananta, the cosmic serpent. Then we can see that on the Jor Damb there are images of Ganga and Jamuna and Dwarpalas, and on the door jump there are figures of the Mithunas, erotic couple or amorous couple figures have been made. We also find that there are rich decoration depicting flowers, depicting different kinds of vegetables, and these are patikas or shakhas, we can call them Vasant Sakha or Kumud Sakha. So, Kumud Sakha, Vasant Sakha and Mithun Sakha, these three main sakhas as door jumps were created in this particular period. So, after first phase in which very simple unpretentious temple structures were made, in the second phase we find that the Jor Jumb and lintel were very they were beautifully carved out. In the third phase of Gupta period, the Sikhara Shaili emerged, and Sikhara Shaili means a superstructure that was made on the Garbhagriha. Another important feature of the Gupta temple was that on one particular adhisthana, the shakal, on that the temple was created. There were made 4 temples in 4 cardinal directions, with the central with the main temple at the very center, and the temple at the center was a large mountainous kind of structure, and the superstructure was a new feature that was added. We have 2 very important temples. One is temple of Bhitargaon, which is a site near Kanpur in Uttar Pradesh, and another place is Devgarh, that is in Jhansi district, again in Uttar Pradesh. At both these places 2 major structures were created. The Bhitargaon temple is made of brick, while the Devgarh temple is made of stone, and Devgarh temple is the example of the Panchayatan style of temple. I have already explained that a Panchayatan temple is one form of temple in that 4 small or subsidiary shrines are made in 4 different cardinal directions apart from the structure which was made at the center. This figure that you are viewing is the temple of Devgarh in dilapidated temple, the superstructure is in dilapidated form, and one major element which was introduced during this period, that the exterior walls of the temples were beautifully decorated, and they have bhadrikas, these are niches. These niches have very interesting figure made typically in Gupta style. They are very lively, and here we can see the figure of Ananta Shahi Vishnu. He is seated, he is in a reclining pose on the Ananta, and the figure of Lakshmi can also be easily identified. So, these kind of figures were introduced during Gupta period, and you can see the plan of the Gupta temple, that it was for the first time the temple with different projections emerged, and we may find that there are temple with 2 projections or sometimes 3-4 projections. If temple has one main wall with 2 projections, it is generally called Trirath temple, and if there are 4 projections, temple will be called Pancharath. If there are 6 projections, temple will be called Saptarath. So, Gupta period is a very important period as far as the evolution of temple is concerned, because we find that there emerged the Shikhara Shaili. Shikhara here means a superstructure. Second important thing is that there emerged temples of Panchayatan style, meaning 5 shrines made on one particular adhisthana, one particular Sakal, and then there emerged temples with different number of projections. So, Gupta period is a very important period as far as temple structure is concerned. Here you can see this is a Trirath kind of temple, and this is the Bhitargaon temple, which is a brick structure, and this is one temple in which a arch has been beautifully made. According to architectural historian Krishnadev, this is not an example of scientific arch, but this arch, making this arch based on corbelled pattern itself was a great achievement. After the downfall of Guptas, we know that later Guptas ruled over Bihar and Middle Gangetic plain. Their empire also extended up to the Varendra region, that means Bengal, and one of the kings named Aditya Sena made a claim that he had a rule, he had a kingdom that extended up to the coastal region, Samudra Prayanta Shashan, and this period, later Gupta period, is very important, though we have various scattered evidences. The evidences are in very dilapidated form, and one important place is Upsad in Bihar in Nawada district, where there was a large brick structure was made on Sarvato Bhadra pattern, but that temple is in ruins, and a large part of that temple has totally collapsed. The temple was covered by very good stucco work that depicted the whole story of Ramayana, the different episodes of Ramayana decorated the entire adhisthana of the temple. Almost in the similar fashion, several major structures were created in Middle Gangetic plain. We have Mundeshwari temple again in Bihar, which is the first major example of an octagonal temple. That temple was dedicated to Shiva. As far as other important structures are concerned, one major temple is Mahabodhi temple, though it is not a Hindu Brahmanical temple as such, but without understanding its major form, we cannot have a fair idea about the contemporary temples. So, you are seeing the Mahabodhi temple, you can see the central peak, this central peak of this superstructure of this particular temple, which is not in curvilinear in form, which is basically a square shaped, but at at different corners you may see there are some subsidiary shrines or there are superstructures which remind us of the Panchayatan style of temple. Almost in the same period in South India, temple structures were made, and the credit goes to one of the greatest kings of Pallav dynasty, rather the first king of Pallav dynasty, Mahendra Varman. Mahendra Varman was responsible for heaving out caves at like Lalitankur and Lakshitayan at a place known as Mandakpattu. But the most important center where a lot of experiments were done was Mahabalipuram. The place is also known as Mamallapuram. And here three different kinds of structures were created. One structure is generally called Mandapa. It is very much similar to a Buddhist cave with a frontal porch, and after the frontal porch one may find a sanctum with the image of the main deity. In the frontal porch one may find different sculptural panels. You can see that these columns are typically Pallava columns with base having roaring lion. This is a very typical example of Pallava kind of column. So Mandapa is a Buddhist type of cave. Mandap basically means a pillared structure, and this is why the term Mandap had become popular for this particular structure. It has no superstructure. We then find monolithic temples at Mahabalipuram, and these are called Panch Pandav Rath. This is a misnomer actually. These are temples dedicated to different Brahmanical deities, and here we can find three different kinds of structure. The first structure you are seeing, it is a typical example of kuti type of temple. It is like a cottage, it is like a hermitage, and this temple is generally called the Draupadi Rath, though it is dedicated to Mahishasur Mardini, and on the facade you can see in the Bhadrikas there are sculptures of Dwarpalikas, and in front of the temple there is figure of lion, that is the Vahana of the goddess. So this typical kind of Ratha is the smallest one. Besides that, there is a typical Dravidian kind of Ratha. Ratha here means monolithic temple with a large stupika made on the top. You may also see some of the typical features of Vimana. Vimana is the superstructure of a South Indian temple. The stupika is on the top, that forms the mastak. Below that there is Koot and Sala pattern, and this Koot and Sala pattern is a very typical, it is a very specific example of decorative pattern of the Vimana. Kuta is slightly domical and Sala is barrel vaulted. The central member is a Sala, at the corners there have been made Kutas. So this Koot and Sala pattern are very important features of the Vimana of South India. The Vimana of South India, unlikely the curvilinear Vimana of North India, is pyramidal in shape, and it forms different storage. It gives you impression of being multi-storied. Between these rows, the upper and lower row of the Koot and Sala, there is a recess which is called Harantar. So Harantara is the recess between the upper and the lower Koot and Sala. We can see that the superstructures are also of the different kinds. The Arjuna Rath that you have earlier seen is a pyramidal kind of superstructure. This is Bhima Rath, made within the same complex, has a barrel vaulted kind of superstructure, and this barrel kind of superstructure was also popular in South India. This is the broadest one. People have identified it as the Bhima Rath. and this is again a typical and Dravidian kind of Vimana. We can consider that a major achievement by the South Indian artist, by the artists of Pallava period, who made a very splendid Vimana with Kut and Sala pattern, and again a stupika on the top. Then the third important form which emerged in this period was structural kind of temples. Probably there were a very good number of temples made at the sea coast, and many of them had submerged in the sea. There is one particular example of this structural temple. Basically, there are two shrines made within one particular complex, and this temple is known as Raj Simheswara temple. Popularly, it is known as the Sor temple of Mahabalipuram. One shrine which is a smaller one, that is dedicated to Lord Vishnu, that has figure of Ananta Sai Vishnu. Another shrine which is larger one is dedicated to Shiva. So both these shrines are actually related to Shiva and Vishnu. And as far as the growth of structural temples is concerned, the largest temple of Pallava period, you can say the loftiest temple of the Pallava period, is the Kailasnath temple of Kanchipuram. Kanchipuram temple is, you can say, a typical example of South Indian temple which functioned as a model for all the great temples which were made in Chola and Chalukya period and also in Rashtrakuta period. It has a large superstructure that you can see, and it is like a mountainous peak with a very circular kind of stupa surmounted by a kalash on the very top. And we have a large Mahamandap also made in front of the Antarala, and the temple has multiple subsidiary shrines. There are 64 small temple niches or small shrines which form the prakara, the fortification wall of the temple. The temple has a beautiful entrance, but it is not a very fascinating or a pretentious kind of gopuram. Apart from a large and impressive gopuram, it has all the typical features of a South Indian temple. Very important fact about this temple is that it was richly decorated not only by sculptures, not only by the sculptures depicting the stories of Shiv Purana. It has also beautiful painting, mural painting, typically based on Ajanta style. So the Ajanta style of temples were made in this particular temple also, and this is the first major example of Hindu murals or Brahmanical murals that represent the story of the Shiv Purana. Another major center in South India, or you can say rather major dynasty that patronized temples, was the Chalukya dynasty. The Chalukyan rulers ruled over a vast empire covering from parts of Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and in this region temple activities were actually started during this period, and one may find that there are very good number of temples, rock cut cave temples which were made during Chalukya period. Especially at three important places we have great number of temples. One is Aihole, from where we have got the inscription of Ravi Kirti depicting the victory of the Chalukyan king over Harshvardhan. That was also the capital city of the Chalukyas. Then we have places like Pattadkal and Vatapi, where very good number of temples were made. One thing that I would like to bring to the fore, that the northern style of temples and southern style of temple, often called a Nagara style of temple and Dravidian style of temple, they got a very you can say fertile ground in the within this Chalukya kingdom, where these two two different kinds of styles amalgamated with each other, and a new form of temple called Besra style of temple emerged during this period. A Besra style of temple is little different from the Nagara style and the Dravidian style, because the Besra style of temple does not have a large superstructure. It does not have a hypostylistic superstructure like the pyramidal shaped superstructure of the Dravidian temple or the curvilinear kind of superstructure. This is Durga temple, which is apsidal in form, and you can see that there is a small superstructure that is not fully developed. Some of the scholars believe that it was earlier a structural chaitya that was transformed into a Hindu temple. So, Chalukya period is very important because at place like Pattadkal, you may find that there is temple like Kasi Vishwanath temple, which is typically made in North Indian style. Then you have temples like Virupak's temple, which is based on the structural pattern and the architectonic designs of the Pallava period. So, multiple experiments were done during the Chalukya period, and the Chalukyan temple form with exquisite carving and decoration influence the structural style or the architectural style of the Rashtrakuta period. We have a place known as Ellora, that is one of the most important site as far as Indian architecture is concerned, where we have 12 caves, 1 to 12 caves, they belong to Buddhist faith. Then we have great number of Hindu caves from 13th to 29th cave. These caves are actually very good example of Hindu rock cut cave architecture. Then we have 4 very significant Jain temples also. 30th to 34th cave number are dedicated to Jain religion. So, in different phases, right from Chalukya period up to late Rashtrakuta period, almost 11th century, 12th century, a very great number of structures were made, and the most magnificent structure of Rashtrakuta period, which was initiated by Krishna first of the Rashtrakuta dynasty, is the Kailas temple, which is the largest example of the rock cut cave temple in India. The temple has a large Sabha Mandap, and after the Sabha Mandap there is Antarala and there is a Garbhagriha, and around Garbhagriha there are small subsidiary shrines which remind us of the Panchayatan style of temple. So, we may say this temple is also a hybridized form. In one way, it has adopted and incorporated some of the North Indian features also, but there is tremendous impact, very conspicuous impact and impression of the Pallava and Chalukyan style on this particular temple. The temple is known for a very complex and a very interesting schemata of sculptural decoration, which cover almost the entire temple. It depicts the stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata. The Adhisthana has wonderful Hayathar and Gajthar pattern. Then we find that in different niches there are different sculptures depicting Shiva as Andhaka Sur Shanghar Murti. We have figures like Markandeya Anugrah Murti. Then Kalyan Sundar image of Shiva is also there. We have images of Vishnu. We have images of Saptamatrika and Shodash Matrika. We have images of Ganga, Jamuna, Saraswati, and at the entrance there is image of Vyas and Valmiki, the two great poets. So, it is a temple which is symbolically very significant. The entire gamut of Indian symbolism is present in this particular temple. You can see this figure. This is Ravan Anugrah Murti. Ravan is shaking Kailas, and apart from that we have the Murti, the sculptures of different Matrikas in this temple. During the same period when Chalukyas were experimenting for making very lofty and attractive structures in south, during 7th 8th century in the region of Odisha, a typical Nagar Shaili of temples emerged, and here one may find that the curvilinearity of the shikhara became the most important aspect of a Odishan temple. Odisha is a state where regional canonical literature on architecture had been very much popular. We find here three different kinds of temple. One temple, one kind of superstructure which has curvilinear kind of shape is known as Rekha Deul, which has pyramidal kind of shape which is known as Pidha Deul, and which has barrel shaped superstructure that is known as Khakhara Deul. So, Odisha has also three different kinds of superstructure. The most prominent one, the most conspicuous one, the most popular one is undoubtedly the Rekha Deul, and this Rekha Deul Shikhara has different pattikas, Vahya Pattika and the Antar Pattika, and these pattikas can rightly be called in English the pleats. These pleats, they go upward and they merge at a particular point which forms the skandha of the temple, and above the skandha there is gal. I would like to tell you that a temple represents the Vastu Purusha. Purusha is the Atma, the soul, and temple itself is considered as the body of this Purusha, the Virat Purusha, the primordial man that according to Vedic literature was sacrificed first, and out of his body the four varnas, the fourfold varna system evolved, the different spheres of the world evolved. So, symbolically Hindu temple is a Vastu Purush, and this is why the different limbs of Hindu temple are named after the limbs of human body. So, a temple has Talajang, temple has Jang, temple has Kati, temple has a Skand, temple has Akshi, temple has Gal, temple has a mastak, temple has also a shikha, and these all words are denotative to the different members, different organs or different limbs of human body. In Odishan temple, these kinds of terminology, these kinds of terms have been very frequently used. This is Mukteswara temple which has a toran and an arched toran based on corbel pattern. This is the first example of Odishan temple which has all the important features, like it has a Jagmohan, a prayer hall, and then there is Antarala and Deul. The temple has a typical kind of prakar also. This is another great example of Odishan temple known as Raja Rani temple. Basically, it is made of a stone with different colors and different textures. These stones are known as Raja Raniya, and this is why this is a Shiva temple, undoubtedly a Shiva temple, because on the lintel there is depiction of Bhairava with a trident symbol, and it is indicative to the fact the temple was dedicated to Shiva. This temple is very different in one particular way from the typical Odishan temples. It has received the impact of the Madhya Deshiya Prasad, means temples which were made in central India, and this is the only example of a temple with multiple shikharas. We call it Anekant Shikhar, means on one main shikhara there are multiple turrets which are called Ang Shikhar or Urushring. You can see that on the Mula Manjari, which is the main turret of the temple, main shikhar of the temple, there have been made shikharas in miniature form. This particular pattern is a very interesting example of Madhya Deshiya Prasad, which were developed during the period of Pratiharaj, which were developed during the period of Chandelaj and Parmaraj rulers of the central India. You may find such kind of superstructure in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, particularly in these areas. However, in Odisha, temples were only having kudu motif on the shikhara. This is the only example where you can see there have been made multiple turrets on the main body of the temple. Odishan temples are very significant in terms of a sculptural decoration, and as the name Utkal, which is often used for the Odisha region, this signifies a place with Utkrishta Kala, means a place where you have very beautiful art forms, a place where art is practiced by common people and where the best example of sculptures are available. So, undoubtedly the Odishan temple are known for very rich sculptural decoration in different mudras with different sort of gestures, different sides, types of positioning of the body, and like some sculpture is standing in Samabhang, some sculptures are standing in Tribhanga, some of the sculptures have been shown in Atibhanga. So, this sculpture is a very beautiful example of Atibhanga. We may find some of the most attractive examples of Odisha in where very large temples were actually been created, and these temples, as you can see in the next figure, this is Lingaraja temple, which is a large complex with very good number of subsidiary shrines. This temple is dedicated to both Shiva and Vishnu, and the smaller shrines and especially the superstructure of Jagmohan is typical example of Pidha Deul. You can see here great number of subsidiary shrines made within the complex, and this is the most fascinating temple of Odishan architecture, the most debated, the most famous one, and undoubtedly when it was made, it was the loftiest and the loveliest temple that represented the typical Kalinga Prasad, the structural form we call Kalinga Prasad. So, this is the Jagmohan. At the front there is Nat Mandap, and behind that there is a large Jagmohan. Jagmohan is the prayer hall, and generally the superstructure of Jagmohan is pyramidal in shape, contrary to the superstructure made over the Deul. The Deul meaning Garbhagriha or the sanctum sanctorum of this temple, that has fallen down. This is a temple dedicated to Surya, and this place itself was known as Konaditya. We also called it Konark. A major part of this temple is made of locally available black stone, which we call khandolite, and this khandolite stone that has been used in some parts of this temple give its a blackish kind of outlook. The sculptural decoration of this temple is again wonderful. It has non-religious sculptures also, a very good number of erotic sculptures have also been depicted, and again we can say that every symbol in this Ratha type of temple, it is chariot shaped in design. The temple is being drawn as a Ratha of Lord Sun with 7 different horses representing the 7 rays of the sunlight. So, symbolically also this temple is very significant, and this is a very wonderful example of, or rather you can say the most interesting, most significant example of the Odishan style of temple. We will see other figures which actually represent the Madhyadeshiya Prasad, means the temple which was made in Middle Ganga plain, or the temples which were actually been made in the region of Uttar Pradesh, some parts of Bihar, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. This region has been called Madhya Desh, and the structures which were made here, they were known as Madhya Deshiya Prasad. The temple structures emerged in this period during Pratihara period, and we have some very significant sites like Oshia in Rajasthan, where great number of Pratihara temples were made. You have Harihara temple there, you have Jain temples also there, Sasiya Mata temple is there, and there a lot of experiment was done as far as decoration is concerned, as far as curvilinearity of the Shikhara is concerned, as far as making multiple mandapas is concerned. These Oshia group of temple is very significant. We find that during this period Gopadari type of Shikhar, which is bit to a great extent exquisite in the design, and then Bhumija type of temples, again a temple with multiple Shikharas, they emerged in this during this period. We have sun temples at Jhalrapatan, that is a very interesting example of the Bhumija style of temple. Then we find there is a place Arthuna in Rajasthan, where we have great number of examples of the Parmara temple. This Pratihar and Parmara period are very significant. Unfortunately, in our art historical debate, rarely these temples are actually mentioned. The Kiradu group of temple in Rajasthan is another significant example of temple architecture of this particular period. However, the greatest achievement during this period was made during the Chandela period. The reason is that whatever had developed during Pratihara period and Chandela period, these were aggrandized, these forms were actually well concretized, well aggrandized and ameliorated during this particular period. Chandelas, who ruled over the region of modern days Bundelkhand, they were great patrons of temple, and we find the Chandela temple structure has a very remarkable contribution in the evolution, in the growth of Hindu temples. The earliest temple is a Chaunsat Yogini temple at this particular place, but that Chaunsat Yogini temple is structurally not very significant. We find that King Dhanga, Ganda and then Vidyadhar, these are the three very important names apart from Yashovarman. Yashovarman is the first great king of Chandela dynasty who patronized temple activities. Later on Gand, Dhang and Vidyadhar, and most remarkably Vidyadhar was the greatest patron of this particular architectural form. The temple which we are viewing is one of the most magnificent example of a Panchayatana temple and made in Pancharatha kind of a style, and it is again one of the finest example of Madhya Deshiya Prasad. So we can see it is made on a large adhisthana or the Vedika, and the Vedika itself is richly decorated with beautiful and wonderful sculptures. Then in four cardinal directions there are subsidiary shrines which make clear that this is undoubtedly a Panchayatana style of temple. Then we find that there emerged 5 major sections in the temple. There is Mukhamandap, followed by Ardhamandap, then it is adjoined to a Mahamandap with lateral transepts made in both the different sides. After that there is vestibule, the Antaral, and then there is a Garbhagriha which is surmounted by a mountainous tower on the top, and this tapering tower has multiple turrets, which is a example of Anekant Shikhar. We can see that how in Gupta period the carving work on the door lintel and door jamb has started. This become highly decorative, and you can say it is decoration par excellence, where each and every section, where from bottom to top, every space is covered with beautiful carving. The entrance is having an Ardha Chandra Sila pattern, and you can see the top which are door lintel has a beautiful decoration, and these toranas, this is a term for the for any gateway of the Hindu temple or entrance of the Hindu temple. We have examples of crocodile kind of toran, makar toran, we have also pushpa toran or gaj toran. So, different kinds of highly stylized gateways were made in this temple. And on the main walls of the temple, there was made great number of sculptures of Vidyadhar, Apsaras, Sura and Sundari images were made, very good number of Vyal figures which are mythical animals. We find reference of 16 different kind of Vyalas in our classical texts like Suk Vyal, Haj Vyal, Gaj Vyal, Hai Vyal, Simha Vyal. So, these Vyala figures are basically composite figures, and these Vyalas figures have been found in great number. You can see that these walls of temples are full of Alankar Murti, decorative images. We have Vigraha Pratima, images which are worshipped, that is installed in the main shrine, but the exterior, which is known as the Bhutakas of the temple, is full of sculptural decoration which are Alankar Murti. Their purpose is Alankaran, their purpose is decoration. We have depiction of Ramayana and Mahabharata, we have depiction of Puranic themes, but apart from that, Kama Sutra has also been given a sculptural form, a sculptural translation in this particular temple. And this is the most impressive example of this Madhyadeshiya Prasad that has mountainous shikhar. The slender and the perfect body of this particular temple, which is known for the balance, rhythm and proportion that it has. It is known for its sculptures, it is known for wonderful lateral transept, it is known for a very significant, very impressive shikhara. You have seen the shikhar of the Lakshmana temple earlier, that is not so balanced. This rhythm, this balance and this proportion which has been created in this temple, which is known as Kandariya Mahadev. Kandariya is a corrupt form of Kandarapa Ari, the enemy of Kandarp means Kam Devata, the god of love, means the temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva. This temple represents the cosmic mountain Kailas, which is the dwelling place, which is the dwelling of Lord Shiva, which is abode of Lord Shiva. The interior is like a cave, the exterior is like a mountain, and in this way this is the cosmic mountain of Shiva, and interior in itself is a mysterious space where the highest knowledge can be attained. Upanishad says, Brahmanasya nidhim nihito guhayam. The jewels of Brahmanical knowledge are within the cave. So, all Hindu temples have an interior typical like a cave, and the exterior has a typical kind of mountainous outlook. This is Modhera temple, which is a very interesting example of Lata Prasad. The word Lata is used for the region of Gujarat, and here we can see the temple is dilapidated in form. The best of the Lata Prasad have unfortunately fallen down. This is the mandapa of the Modhera Shiv temple, and then there were made beautiful temples in the region of Rajasthan and Gujarat. These are actually Jain temples, but what is important is the development of this Bhuvaneshwari is the name of the ceiling of the temple, which has coffer and cups design called Chipta Uchipt Vidhan in our ancient canonical literature. During 10th century, the Chola style of temple occupied a very prominent position in South India, and this is the Brihadeshwar temple, which was a great temple institution, had the largest Vimana that creates impression of a 30-storied Vimana, and on the top there is a stupika which is 80 tons in weight. The temple has two gopurams, very interesting gopurams. One is known as Rajeswaram Gopuram, another is Kerlantkan Gopuram. And the gopuram became very, very impressive. You can see the figures of Dwarpalas are made on the facade of this gopuram. In the same period in South India, in the region of Karnataka, the Hoysala group, Hoysaleswar temple was made, Chinakeswar temple at Belur were made, and these are typical example of Besra style of temples. They do not have very impressive shikhara, but these star shaped temples are very rich in terms of decoration. And later on during Vidyanagar period, the gopuram became very large and temples were made with multiple shrines. You can see some of the examples of these subsidiary shrines at a place known as Hampi, that was the capital of the Vijayanagar. During this period, a great number of subsidiary shrines like Kalyan Mandap, Amman Mandap, Araikul Mandap, Nurukul Mandap were introduced within the temple complex. And what was the most impressive feature of Vijayanagar temple was that the gopuram became multi-storied, it became hypo-stylistic and pretentious. Prakara was made very large, they comprises of tremendous height, and temples appears like a small city. The style which was evolved by the Vijayanagar kings continued even during the period of the Nayaka rulers, and we find that at a place named Madurai, we have the best example of the Nayak style of temple. This temple is known as Meenakshi Sundareswar temple. One difference one may trace, one may find between the Vijayanagar temple and Nayak temple is that the temples of Nayak period are very large, but sculptures are not of great quality. So, this is the story of the Hindu temples which emerged during the Gupta period, and the growth of temple in terms of its height, length, breadth and decoration continued up to the Nayak period. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the very interesting and very beautifully presented lecture in terms of the visuals also and the descriptions. So, thank you so much, sir. And friends, just to let you know that we are going to, of course, take this up further in another lecture, talking about another set of temples with sir. So, thank you so much, sir, for being here today. We appreciate it, and thank you, friends, for watching us. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.